Firearms, alcohol, and tobacco? Sounds like a pretty good time.
Hey everyone, Fat Guy CJ back with another Firearms Friday for you all. Last week, we installed an extended slide release and an aftermarket BeaverTail grip on a Glock 17 Generation 4. A set of modifications that were really on the beginner level. This week, continuing on with that same Glock 17, making it more ergonomic for the shooter's hands, we're going to progress into a more of an intermediate to an expert level modification, all depending on how comfortable you are with your skills. So today we're going to be permanently modifying the frame of the firearm by cutting in malfunction cuts, knuckle cuts, as well as shooter cuts. Again, these are permanent modifications that will be done to the frame of your gun. If you do not go slow, you will ruin the frame of your firearm. These modifications are meant for me and my hands. What may feel good to me might feel good to other people, but chances are they're not going to feel good to everybody. Your best bet is to try to track down this firearm with the modifications already on it, and then test it out to see if you like it yourself. I cannot stress enough how permanent these modifications are. If you don't pay attention to exactly what you're doing, you're going to ruin the frame of your firearm. So, if you're back just for entertainment purposes, it's great to see you again. And if you're here for a how-to, please watch this video in its entirety before modifying the frame of your gun.
As always, the very first thing you want to do with any firearm before you start working on it is to make sure that it's unloaded and safe. It doesn't matter if you've been around guns for your entire life or not. Complacency kills. Last week, you might remember me saying that Glocks don't feel good to anyone because they're designed for everyone. In addition to what I did last week, this week I'm going to be cutting what I call Glock Cuts into the frame of the gun to make it more ergonomic for me. Shaving part of the trigger guard off where it connects to the grip is called the Knuckle cut. This allows for a higher purchase on the firearm and solves the issue of the Glock callus. I will also be making a shooter's cut on the bottom side of the trigger guard to allow my support hand to get a higher grip on the gun. Another cut that I'll be making today is what I call the Malfunction Cut. These are cuts in the bottom part of the grip and look like semicircles. They're designed to allow the shooter to grab onto a magazine that may be jammed in the gun and won't break away freely. On a side note, it is possible to cut the grip on a Glock 17 down to accept Glock 19 or Glock 26 mags, but I won't be doing that today. You will need a pencil for this, not a pen. Ink is somewhat permanent, and I'd rather be able to wipe off the graphite. All you need to do is simply trace out where you're going to be cutting. Remember, this is not permanent, so if you mess up your stencil, you can always try again. It's important to remember when you're stenciling that you can always take material off. You can never put it back on. On the opposite side of the gun, try your best to make symmetrical stencils. This is not 100% vital as you'll be cutting all the way through the material. For the malfunction cuts, I take a soda bottle cap and use about 1/4 of its depth and try to place the top of the curve in the middle of the gun. These are the only two cuts that you have to get 100% symmetrical before cutting, or it will look terrible when you're done cutting. The best way I've found to get the cuts as close to symmetrical as possible is to use a piece of tape. Mark out the length of the cut as well as the depth. This won't be perfect, but it'll be close enough. After you're happy with all of your stenciling, you're ready to start making the modifications. Remember, you can always take material off, but you can never put it back on. Go slow. Alright, so now I'm out in the shop where I can start dremeling the material. The first cut we're going to do is the Malfunction Cut. I don't know what it is about it, but out of the 3 cuts today, this is the least nerve-wracking for me. Again, we need to make sure the firearm is clear, and as you can see, it still is. Before we start cutting away, we're going to take it apart. This is to prevent the slide from getting jammed onto the frame, as well as make it easier for me to maneuver the frame as I'm working on it. Use a coarse head on your Dremel tool and apply a very small amount of pressure. This will let the Dremel head do its job without taking too much material off too quickly. You can see that it's not taking too long at all to get the cut I'm looking for. After I've essentially outlined the material I want to take off, I just need to get through the frame. You might see some large shavings barely hanging on. It's okay to pull these off. I wouldn't use the Dremel tool for fear of causing unwanted damage to the inside of the frame. After you remove most parts of the material, replace the coarse head with a smoother one. This helps slightly polish the area, making it look more professional. When you're happy with one side, move on to the next, remembering everything you've learned thus far. Next, I'll be doing the knuckle cut. This is pretty simple and not nerve-wracking either. Again, be sure not to apply too much pressure as you don't want to cut all the way through the trigger guard. You can really tell that it doesn't take a lot of time at all to make progress when doing these cuts. If you're not careful, you can start to erase the front stippling on the grip. Remember to file down both of the sides of the trigger guard too. You can't just cut in the middle and expect a world of difference. You'll notice that I keep moving my Dremel head from side to side to get an even cut, while applying a very small amount of pressure. So my cut is getting pretty high, which is exactly what I want, except my knuckles are too big to get into where I just cut. So I'm just going to use my Dremel to round out the part that's still interfering with my finger. I didn't remove a lot of material, but the small amount that I did turned out to be quite effective. Now it's on to the shooter's cut. This is the part that makes me nervous, only because of how thin the material is that I have to work with. Again, I'm going to use the coarse head with the Dremel on its lowest setting. I'm not even going to apply any pressure to it this time. I'm going to let the weight of the Dremel tool be the only thing that's pressing down. I can't stress this enough. Go slowly. Once again, you can always remove material, you can never replace it. I did notice that while I was doing this, I started making a deeper cut on the right side. I noticed that when I was cutting, I had my Dremel on an angle. It doesn't take too much for me to start evening it out. I really like the way that looks, and I love the way it feels. I don't think I'll cut down any further, but I will even everything out. You'll notice that there's a lot of debris. Just like when you cut wood, you're going to have some sawdust, for lack of a better word. I've found that the best way to clean the frame off is by rinsing it with water. Now, I know what you're all thinking, but hear me out. I'm not saying leave it in a bowl of water overnight and forget about it. I'm saying quickly rinse it off with water, dry it off as best you can, and apply a thin coat of cleaning oil on all of the internal components. Doing this will not cause your gun to rust, and it removes all of the foreign particles that you created while dremeling out your firearm. Today, I cut the Malfunction Cuts into the bottom of the grip, the Knuckle cut in the back of the trigger guard, and the Shooter's cut in the bottom of the trigger guard.
Alrighty guys, thanks for joining us for another Firearms Friday. Obviously what we did today required a little bit higher of a skill set than what we did last week with the extended slide release and the BeaverTail Grip. That being said though, if you do go slow and you do take your time and you're relaxed with what you're doing, paying full well attention to it, you're not going to have any troubles with these modifications. Again, if you guys have any questions on why I did what I did, how to do what I did, or anything related, go ahead and leave a comment. Also, if you have any suggestions for future Firearms Fridays, please, we'd love to hear from you too. Come back next week when we'll finish the permanent modifications on this Glock.